A redacted affidavit used to justify the search of former President Donald Trump's Florida home shows more than 24 documents were marked top secret, and many others had classification markings as well. Joining me right now is Chuck Todd, the moderator of NBC's Meet the Press. So Chuck, the release of this affidavit is a major departure from the norm, especially this early in an investigation. So in our already supercharged political environment, what's going to be the fallout here?
Well, I think we had already seen the fallout of what happens when you have no information. You know, we had 3 weeks of filling in the gaps. You had a vacuum. Trump and his supporters filled that vacuum with a lot of misinformation and all of this, and the Justice Department operating under some old rules, I would argue, sort of I think a bit naive of the world we live in now, chose to go down the path they did. When you see what us in the news media basically argued before a federal judge, and when a federal judge essentially made the Justice Department do, which is, hey, go back, you can release some of this stuff. And in fact, I think it paints a more complete picture. I think I certainly understand the scope of the investigation. I think the affidavit only reinforces the Justice Department's decisions here and the FBI's decisions. It lays out that they paid the president, former president, a lot of deference. They went through, this was about 15 months of negotiations before they finally decided to throw up their hands and execute a search warrant. Why did we have to drag that information out? You know, we have changed the way we share intelligence thanks to Vladimir Putin's misinformation. I think that this, to me, I hope the Justice Department looks at this as a lesson of going, you know, in certain situations, and look, none of this should have been released, but Donald Trump is the one who decided to make it public. At that point, they did owe us as complete of an explanation as they have without damaging individuals or their sources and methods. They ended up doing that, and we went through 3 weeks of, you know, of essentially, I think, undermining the credibility of an institution unnecessarily.
All right, switching gears right now, another big event this week, President Joe Biden announcing his student debt relief plan, but there's some critics out there, including those who paid off their own debts, and residents of states where attending college can be quite difficult. So it seemed that Democrats were making some headway in national polling in the past few weeks, but does this decision by the president give Republicans a new line of attack?
I think it gives them a new line of attack. I don't know how effective it will be in the long run. You know, this feels like one of those issues where those that benefit will never forget. Those that don't like it likely will move on to another issue in a week or two that they're upset on. But look, I think the criticism that I think is most intriguing on this decision by President Biden is the criticisms he's getting from fellow Democrats and Democratic-leaning economists who say, you know, this is, you know, look, it's probably going to be negligible on the inflationary front, but it isn't going to decrease inflation. Okay, so there's that issue, but they didn't tackle the core problem, you know, which is the high cost of higher education and sort of this. And look, I worry that this decision to cancel debt is only going to encourage universities and colleges to raise their price more, because hey, our students, well, you know, they can get the loans, and you know, maybe their debt will get wiped away. I don't think they tackled the core problem very effectively, even if they did provide some necessary relief for people that needed it.
Okay, I guess we have to wait and see. Meet the Press airs Sunday morning at 10 a.m. only right here on 11 Alive. Thanks a lot, Chuck.
Thank you, Ron.